In this video, we are going to be ranking every single Championship manager from the 24-25 season, sacked or still in post. I'm joined with the brilliant Tom Chappell. Tom, how you doing? You're going to help me rank some managers. It's going to be controversial. It's going to cause some conversation, but that's what we're here to do.
Trees up.
Tree is up. It's Christmas. Welcome.
It's Christmas. Welcome. Thank you for having me back. Thank you to you at home for joining us as well. It's a contentious video. We should say at the start, this is going to be opinion-led and opinion-based, isn't it? And I think that's probably something that we ought to make clear right from the off. We may have a different opinion on your team's manager than you have on them, and that is just going to be part of the course. So if you feel that a manager is in too high of a slot, too low of a ranking, or the tier is wrong for your gaffer, then let us know in the comment section down below. We'd love to hear where you would put not every Championship manager, because you'd be down there for a while on the comments, wouldn't you? But we'd love to hear what you think about potentially your manager, and then maybe a few select ones if you've got a... What's the word?
Contrasting opinion?
If you've got a contrasting opinion, or if you've got a strong opinion on any manager in the Championship, let us know.
I think the best place to start is running through our tier list, because every manager will be going into a tier list. Let's run through the tiers, because we're quite proud of this. It took us a while to find the right tiers. We didn't want to go basic. We never do. So we have decided to go with the following. The bottom tier. Nobody wants to be in this tier, but there will be a manager, or at least one manager, in the bottom tier. Lost the dressing room. Above that, skating on thin ice. Middle tier, safe pair of hands. It's safe. He's not blowing us away. He's not in deep trouble. He's a safe pair of hands. Top gaffer, and then the top tier, keys to the city. So I'm going to start us off. In league table order, apologies, we're starting with John Mousinho's Portsmouth.
Top gaffer. It's top gaffer. Yes, we're bottom. I refer you haven't mentioned it, our criteria for this, which you might want to... We had a phone call a couple of days ago. We've been sort of discussing this and been wanting to do this video for a while. The criteria is their tenure relative to the football club and demands of the position, plus a consideration made for this season so far. So that is our gospel. That is what we're going by. That's where we're going to be building our arguments from. And in terms of what he's delivered at the club, he's delivered what we as a club have been craving for so many years, 12 desperate, long and challenging years to be precise. And the start to the season has been obviously subpar and a start to the season shrouded by stops and starts and heavily disrupted in terms of injuries, games, international breaks, although I know that's the same for all of us. I mentioned in the video yesterday, or my video yesterday, that the Pompey ecosystem has been dominated in large part this season by a nervousness, a fragility and a naivety, if you will, and there's no hiding from the fact that that stems from the top, because it does. And there's only so much of a deliverable message that you can provide before the onus is on your players to go out and deliver it, of course. I'll counter that by saying that John Mousinho is the single best thing that's happened to Portsmouth Football Club in the best part of a decade. And there is no one I would rather want in charge than John Mousinho, both as a person and a professional. And for that reason, he's a top gaffer.
Okay, I think that's fair. We will have a conversation in the comments, but also together now about it. I think he probably is in that because of what he has achieved. That's important to mention. We're looking at his entire time at Portsmouth and so far this season. It's fair to say that so far this season, it hasn't been brilliant, but he won a league title in his first full season as a manager, and that doesn't go unnoticed. Marti Cifuentes at QPR I've got next. Again, this is where the criteria and, again, opinions come into it. I really like Marti. I think he's a really, really good coach, and his stock will be always up in the air because of what he is like and how he wants to coach a football team. It's not always easy at QPR, and again, so far this season, up into the last couple of weeks, it's been very, very challenging. He kept them up last season. He came in, changed the way they wanted to play. Not drastically, but definitely improved it from the Gareth Ainsworth QPR that we saw. Very, very different style of play that he was looking to adopt. So far this season, again, it hasn't been incredible, but again, it was a very different recruitment strategy, and there's very, very different profiles of player that he was looking to integrate. If you actually look at his current team win percentage at 32%, that's not bad. A 1.3 points per game isn't bad whatsoever. I think he's either... I've gone with top gaffer because I think if he left QPR, he'd still get a Championship job. That's not always the best way of judging it, but I think that shows how much of a, quality coach he is. He's either safe pair of hands or top gaffer. I'm going to stick to my guns and say top gaffer because I really like the way that he coaches, And last season, he came into a very difficult QPR situation. I mean, the team that he inherited under Gareth Ainsworth was shot of confidence and looking terrible. He kept them up, and that should definitely be credited.
Next up for me is a man who doesn't have a job anymore, and that is Tim Volter at Hull City, or who was at Hull City before their interim caretaker took charge at the time of recording. That's going straight and lost in the dressing room. It was a bizarre situation, wasn't it? And we probably won't spend too much time on it because I'm sure you all know the story. No one ever seemed to really like him at Hull, I don't think. That never really, or maybe not like him's the wrong word. Maybe no one really warmed to him, I think is probably the best way to describe it. And he looked on the ropes, or for the purposes of this video, he was skating on thin ice for quite some time. Even before we went up there about a month ago, his press conferences I felt were often quite a difficult listen, and I can't say that I've listened to all of them, but the ones that directly involve Pompey, he called out the fans for not being loud enough by sort of comparing and contrasting them, and I think that maybe the language barrier thing didn't quite help. I don't think he quite made the point that he wanted to, and it came across a little bit more aggressive than maybe he would have put it. He struck me as quite a stubborn character and someone who, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Of course, I expect them massively regretting the decision they made on Liam Rosenior by now. I don't know the whole board personally. I don't know the setup they've got there, but certainly from an outsider looking in, that looks like a bad call.
I think he was one of those managers that the board wanted to give time, but it was going to be so difficult to give time based on the relationship that the fans had with the previous manager, and that makes it even more difficult to warm to a new coach. I think when you have such a relationship with the manager before you then got a manager come in that, let's be honest, we didn't know too much about. Not that that's a bad thing, but it means you have to prove yourself quicker. And he didn't prove himself quick enough.
0.8 points per game.
It's poor. Really, really, really bad.
17% win percentage.
He lost some key players in the summer. They did try and recruit. They did try and bring more players in. They spent a fair amount of money. Yes, they did bring in a fair amount of money. But it just did not come together. And I'm not quite sure if I trust the Hull City board to get the next appointment right either. Not for now, but interested. I'm worried for Hull City, and Tim Volter did not help things. Let's move on to Wayne Rooney, which is going to cause
this is big.
Some conversation, I'm sure. I think it's really easy for us to come here and absolutely rinse Wayne Rooney and just rip him apart. Because if you look at the numbers, the lowest career win percentage out of every Championship manager currently in the league, with 27%. That actually includes Tim Volter's, who's quite high. 1.1 points per game, 26% win percentage at Plymouth after the 19 games that he's been there for. However, you can't argue with the facts that away from home especially, they are dire. They are so, so bad.
Recency bias, but they've conceded 10 goals this week.
It's not good. It's not good. And what struggles with me a little bit more is the fact that even away from home, they try and set up more defensively. They can be resilient for a period of time. One goes in, floodgates have opened, and they look a total mess. If one thing doesn't go their way, especially on the road, it's crumbled, and you might as well just all go home after that one goal. I think it was 0-0 at half time against Bristol City. It finished 4-0.
And that's a characteristic of a lower end of the league side, isn't it? Something else I didn't like about what I saw from Wayne Rooney's decision-making, there'll be reasons behind this, and it actually worked in their favour because they beat us, and I'm not being sour about it. They rested a load of players for that Leeds game where they got tonked up there for the Tuesday, or was it a Wednesday night? I think it was a Tuesday night game against Pompey. They won it by a really fine margin, and I think Plymouth fans would agree to that, and we had so many chances to score goals, and in the end, the team that won it, the moment went their way sort of thing. But he rested a lot of players, and I almost thought that was kind of an admission of defeat even before a whistle had blown and a ball had been kicked.
Or is it sensible management to say that you've got to look at the games in which you're going to realistically get points against? He looked at Leeds and went, even full strength against Leeds, we're not going to get anything. However, if we save them for Portsmouth, that's the game that we want to try and identify.
The fact that they won that game says, yes, there's probably a backable argument there, but had they lost against us, I think everyone would be saying a completely different thing.
And actually, since then, they haven't been great. They really haven't been great. And away from home, they almost are written off before they've turned up. They'll be resilient for a period of time, and then it just does all fall apart. The setup isn't right. I'm not quite sure there's a real identity about that Plymouth team. I use the word controlled chaos at home, I think, because when they do win and when they have picked up results, it's been very chaotic. It's the
best kind of chaos, though, controlled chaos.
It is, and I think it went from controlled chaos to just total chaos. But it was a case at home, especially of sort of let it let everything go free a little bit and express yourself. Away from home, that you can't do that. You have to be organised. You have to be structured, and that comes down to coaching. That comes down to being well coached in a unit. Difficult circumstances on the road, and the results suggest that they're not those things.
We are heading up the M5 and across the Welsh border to Cardiff for Omar Riza, who is a top gaffer for me. Oh, sorry, where are we going to put Wayne Rooney, by the way?
I think he's probably skating on thin ice.
Okay. Yeah, and that is probably a really good way to describe him. Our comments on Football Park are perhaps a little bit premature given the last few games that haven't been amazing for Cardiff, and they haven't won in 5, so I think we probably gave him the kiss of death when we went up to London and filmed that. He's going in top gaffer. The board have, I think, fallen on their feet with him a little bit, and I wonder if, as the weeks go on, the dust settles a little bit, perhaps the nuances and the details begin to evidence themselves that more than they would. Is the traditional new manager honeymoon period, is that starting to wear off a little bit, is my question. Let's see how it goes. The bottom line for me is back to the criteria. What's the expectation from Cardiff City fans from when he takes over? The expectation would be steer them away from the drop zone and back to safety. They've veered back towards it this month. Yes, they have, but remain a spot or two clear for now. So I think he's a top gaffer. But as things start to work themselves out, I worry that if we were to film this in, say, a couple of months' time, he might drop down a few tiers.
Do you want to go meet in the middle and say safe pair of hands? I think he hasn't managed enough games yet for me to say he's a top gaffer. The sample size is so small. What he's done in that sample size is impressive.
He came in and blew us away, though, didn't he? Those first couple of weeks.
It couldn't have got much worse.
Yeah, I suppose.
I'm not taking anything away from, and the squad isn't terrible.
The squad's a good squad. We've said this before. The squad's a great squad. Callum O'Dowda. There's
Colwill.
Levi Colwill is probably one of the best players I've seen in the Championship this season. I've been at every game for Pompey, and he's probably the standout performer. Let's meet in the middle. Let's go down. Just because of that last month, let's go back down a safe pair of hands.
Rob Edwards at Luton Town next. This is really tricky. Really, really difficult. 32% current team win percentage, 1.2 points per game, but we have to remember, of course, this was a Premier League campaign that's been taken into consideration there. 39% career win percentage, which I think is around about average, and 95 games has been at Luton. I think it's quite difficult because where they currently find themselves is really, really poor.
Considering what happened last season.
And I think a few people they were quite difficult to predict because they were the best team last season that got promoted into the Premier League in terms of being as competitive as they possibly could be. Mm-hmm. And then they did, they lost Ross Barkley, they lost some players that were important within that, some players that are on loan as well. But the start of the season, no matter who you lose and no matter how last season ended, it's been very, very bad. They've been second best in so many games. They've been in control of games and thrown them away. They've actually just been, at times, just totally outclassed by opposition. And it's fair to say that Luton Town fans are not happy with Rob Edwards currently as their manager. If we're looking at his entire tenure, going back to that criteria, he was the manager that won them the promotion into the Premier League. Was he there for the entire season? No, he wasn't. He inherited a Luton Town squad that's been knocking on the door of Premier League promotion for quite a long time. He was the man that did it. They were competitive in the Premier League until the last couple of weeks. And now, so far this season, it hasn't been very good. If we're looking at the current position that Rob Edwards finds himself in, he is skating on thin ice. The only reason why he's not skating on thin ice, I think, is because of the compensation that he could be, inheriting if they make that call after signing a new contract in the summer.
According to various reports.
That could be a reason why they're waiting a little bit longer, because they were confident that giving him that new contract after the Premier League campaign was a good thing to do. I don't think they recruited very well in the summer. And we're now looking at a squad that looks a little bit samey, and they're trying to get results out of the side that are really, really struggling for confidence and haven't got a plan B. They're not very dynamic. They feel very one-dimensional.
Skating on thin ice?
I think he's skating on thin ice. Although I like Rob Edwards as a manager.
So do I.
He's having a poor Luton Town season.
I wonder how heavy the success of last season weighs on the decision there.
And that momentum to go again is difficult. Really difficult to go again.
Paul Heckingbottom is basically the definition of a safe pair of hands for me in a managerial sense overall. And I know the criteria is quite specific to the club that these people are managing. I think asking any fan who has had their team managed by Paul Heckingbottom, they would probably use the word safe pair of hands, wouldn't they, to describe him. I think my opinion is perhaps warped a little bit by seeing, by his own admission, the worst of the worst in terms of his Preston sides, particularly in that first half at Fratton Park just a few short weeks ago. Performance-wise, they literally offered zero in that first half, like expected goals, shots, whatever. Every metric was
very low, if not there at all.
Nada. I think he'll keep him up. That's not the expectation of a well-established side in the Championship in Preston. They want more, hence he isn't any higher up the tiers for me. But I think safe pair of hands is a decent description of the situation with Paul Heckingbottom at Preston right now. But you thought I was a little bit harsh with that? Or did you say I was being a bit kind?
Well, if we're looking at his entire... Again, we're looking at him as a Preston manager.
Not as a manager.
Not because what he did at... he won Sheffield United promotion into the Premier League, and that was really, really impressive. I think in the Championship, he's got a very, very good record. If the numbers and the win percentage at this level are, very, very good. He's got a 39% win percentage as a manager, which again, he's good. It's the same as Rob Edwards. Remember, Rob Edwards had a really good season at Forest Green before Watford and then now Luton. So we're taking into consideration every job he has been a part of. I think, he is a safe pair of hands. I think he's probably a top gaffer. But he's also a safe pair of hands. So
that's where we come into the last little bit of the consideration made for this season so far, and therefore it's a safe pair of hands.
Yeah, and he will keep pressing the division. I think he will. Next up, let's head to Oxford United. Des Buckingham, who...
Strap up, everybody. Here we go.
Who, again, this is going to strike, of course, a little bit of controversy because we are... and I think you were very fair with Mousinho, actually, so maybe not...
Thank you.
Maybe not so much the bias side of
that.
it. I don't think Oxford United could get a better manager than Des Buckingham, and for the club that we are and where we currently find ourselves, and I think that's the best way of describing Des Buckingham's job, role, and position that he currently has. He won us promotion into the Championship for the first time in 25 years. He is currently keeping us out of that bottom three. We've beaten some really good Championship teams so far. We've picked up some good points against teams that are around us. And we've been very, very competitive in, I want to say, probably 16 out of the 18 games we've played. Maybe 15. We've been extremely competitive. And all we could have asked for is to be competitive. If you look at the predictions that everybody made, if you look at the bookies that everybody were putting bets on at the start of the season, Oxford United were rock bottom of every single one of those conversations. And we're not bottom of the league. And I think we've been far more competitive than what people thought that we would be.
Where are you putting him?
From an Oxford standpoint, he's got keys to Oxford United, being an Oxford fan himself. People are going to say,
go with your gut, lad. Come on.
He's got keys to Oxford United. It's a city. He ticks every single box of those. He also will manage in the Premier League.
Frank Lampard's on my list, and we're chatting about the appointment. He's not going to appear on the tier list, so I won't go into too much detail. It's always important to get your successor appointment right, isn't it? Whenever and wherever you sack a manager at a club. That's a given on any level. Where it becomes even more important is when you're choosing a successor off the back of a dynasty and an era the size of and the significance of Mark Robins. It's not a one-game fix for Lampard. We saw that evidence yesterday. I don't think it was brilliant from his commentary team against Cardiff. Time will tell if it's the right call. He's not on the tier for obvious reasons, but it's nice to see Frank Lampard as a Championship manager. It would be cool to be able to chat about him in jams, in your reflections, in your videos. There might even be, I don't know, scope for a Coventry City under Frank Lampard video coming soon on the channel. I don't know whether
if
there's
they start
plans
playing
for that.
well.
Yeah, so wait and see.
Paul Warne at Derby County.
You got some toughies, haven't you?
I have. I don't know. And by the way, the way that we did this was simply alternate between the league positions currently. So this was not done on purpose, but I've been given some very, very tough ones. And Paul Warne's difficult because in the Championship, before this season, he had a very, very bad record. A very, very poor record. In League One, it was sublime. Rotherham got into the Championship and they were straight back down very, very quickly. This season, something is slightly different. He did eventually get Derby County back into the Championship, and he did it well in the end, second place. It was convincing by the end of the league. In the end, there was never conversation about playoffs, really. It was a comfortable second place finish, and they were very, very happy with that, of course. And so far this season, I've been really impressed with Derby. We are recording this before they play Sheffield Wednesday this afternoon, but up to this point, I've been very, very impressed with them. They've been strong, they've been resilient, they've been boisterous, a bit aggressive, and that's exactly what you expect from a Paul Warne team. And we're a little bit worried that they were that in League One, but could they translate that into Championship football against, let's be honest, teams that have got a tendency to play slightly better football with a better quality of player, and they've been able to transfer that style brilliantly well. Therefore, Paul Warne, at his time at Derby County, if you looked at when he came in to where they wanted to get to, they would want to be a side back in the Championship, not in a relegation battle. They might still end up there, but right now they're not. And be a comfortable, competitive Championship team.
Do I sense a top gaffer coming?
I think he's a top gaffer. At his current role at Derby County, he has ticked the boxes. I think most Derby fans... Is it attractive all the time? No, it's not. But they won't complain about it when they're mid-table in the Championship.
It's shockingly bad to watch when they lose, but it's absolutely fine when they win.
If you end the season 13th, there won't be one complaint about the style of play.
Narcis Pelach is someone who we don't have an awful lot to evidence off, so this is not going to be the longest segment in this video. I'm going to go straight down the middle with safe pair of hands. He came into Stoke as a bit of a who's this guy kind of character, didn't he? And a couple of decent wins under the belt since his arrival. Derby, Blackburn, ourselves. Absolute humdinger against ourselves. He's guided Stoke back to the comforts of a mid-table Championship side, their 7th season outside the Premier League. Now, of course, is he the man to get them back heading towards that way? I don't know.
And that's fine we don't know, because I don't think even Stoke fans
they don't
know either.
But this is a wait-and-see job. It's an appointment that came about a little bit strangely. It's not quite the orthodox way that managers get appointed, because I don't think many of us outside of a Stoke persuasion really saw the whole thing.
I don't think
coming.
even Stoke did.
I think
Stoke fans didn't.
I don't know, it depends who you ask. But yeah, I think we'll wait and see. We'll go straight down the middle. The purpose of this video is not Narcis Pelach, I don't think. I think he's maybe a little bit of an outlier, as some of them are so far. Let's go safe pair of hands, and let's move on to a manager. Oh no, you're doing another one, and I've got one that I saw yesterday.
Danny Rohl, we've got next. Again, if you ask a Sheffield Wednesday fan, they'll only say positive things, and that has to be considered as well, because he was a breath of fresh air when he got appointed at Sheffield Wednesday. The time before, I mean, it helped that the manager before that couldn't be thought more disjointed and couldn't have had a worse time as Sheffield Wednesday manager. Danny Rohl came in.
He's brilliant, isn't he?
And he is really, really, really good. Both as a coach, and he's definitely improved them. But he also, as a personality, he gets it. He gets Sheffield Wednesday. He gets what it's about, and he also has formed a really strong relationship with the supporters. And if there's a football club to do that, it's Sheffield Wednesday, because they are so important to the way that football club runs. And he's managed to tick that box fantastically well. Current team win percentage is so good. 42% is strong. 1.4 points per game as well. 42%, of course, is the career win percentage. This was his first job as a first team manager. He's actually been there for quite a while. 59 games, which doesn't sound like loads, but if you compare it to quite a few of these managers, that's quite a few games. I think Danny Rohl probably has keys to Sheffield Wednesday. Not all of Sheffield.
I was going to say, he can't have keys to Sheffield, can he?
No, he can have keys to a bit of the city.
Bit of the city.
Half the city. Let's do that. Let's say that he's definitely got keys to the Sheffield Wednesday aspect of the city, because he is loved and adored. He's improved them, and he's a really, really good personality.
Luke Williams is next up on my list, and I'm going straight down the middle again with safe pair of hands. I've got a few boring ones, haven't I? I've got a few middle ones.
Apologies.
I saw Swansea rather brutally described as having performances of a playoff chasing team, but results of a relegation side, which I thought was interesting. He's a cool customer, Luke Williams. He's quite a trendy, quirky kind of guy, isn't he? He's quite well liked amongst the sort of analytical side of the content creators, of which I am not one, and my colleague here is. We talk about stocks all the time, don't we? And he shop windowed himself, I feel, for a decent position in the Championship. Came in January, did a good ship steady last season. Now his side's looking to kick on. Compared to some of the managers that we've already spoken about, some of the managers to come, he's been at Swansea for a while, yet it still feels like a job in its infancy to me. A firm verdict can be drawn based off this season's outcome, I think, but I'm going to go straight down the middle with Luke Williams for now.
Liam Manning next. Again, purely accidental. I've got a bit of an experience of Liam Manning when he was at Oxford United, but we're looking at his time at Bristol City as well. And yeah, let's look at some numbers. 32% current team win percentage, 1.3 points per game. Again, it's okay. It's not great. 45% career win percentage, which is very, very good. I mean, his MK Don season helped. His Oxford United tenure, especially in that first full season where he didn't complete the full season, won't get into it, although it worked out quite well. Again, let's not get into it. Was good. He's a really, really good football coach. He's a really good coach. He's got some really good ideas. And when it all comes together, they look fantastic. And yes, there was a good example against, a poor Plymouth team. But again, the ideologies, the principles, the philosophy is fantastic. And when they're on it, they look like a brilliant team that's been well built, well recruited, and therefore well coached. However, Bristol City are desperate to stop being the team that are just so Sky Bet Championship and just always in the middle. They want to progress. They want to climb up the league table. Will it happen this season? We don't know. We're not sure. I think there's a bit more positivity because it started better. Normally Bristol City have a slower start and then they can creep back up into a conversation and then they fall away again. Did the conversation ever happen? I think because this league is so open, Bristol City will still be there. They got 25 points. They're only, look at the league table really quickly, 5 points away from the top 6. It's still early days and it's very, very tight. And Liam Manning is a manager that really, really could achieve that because he has got a really, really good Bristol City team that can, with evidence already this season, playing really well. And last season too.
Where are you putting him?
He's either top gaffer or safe pair of hands. I think he's probably lower end top gaffer. I think he really could be successful at Bristol City.
This one fits like an absolute glove. Neil Harris at Millwall, Mr. Millwall, managing Millwall by their own admission, I think a tricky way into the season, and they found some form of late. They are still one of the form teams in the Championship at this moment in time. I believe it's 8 unbeaten. However, there's quite a big however. Yesterday, he seemingly got it all wrong with the team, and the argument that his selections are costing them points and certain players not getting a look in seems to be quite a widely shared opinion amongst Millwall fans. I didn't get to see them play on Wednesday night for obvious reasons. We've all had a little bit of a laugh and joke about that to those who are external to Portsmouth Football Club. They look good in the warm-up. I mean, that's kind of all I can tell you. Criteria-wise, we won't base it off one afternoon in Oxfordshire because I don't think that's fair. His tenure, or this tenure at Millwall in this particular case, is going well. Looking at what the position demands of him, I think he's in large part fulfilling. So therefore, but it's tainting it a little bit, isn't it? Because there seems to be a bit of a restlessness about the way in which he's going about it. And when your fans start to question a manager's team selection, that normally is a characteristic and a hallmark of something that's going a bit pear-shaped. So,
but then I think where
I was firmly on top gaffer until I properly looked into it.
I think he is. Neil Harris again is a manager that will have his own ways. If he thinks it's the way to
this
go,
way or the highway.
He will do that. Yeah. And at times that's going to rub people up the wrong way. But if you currently look at where Millwall are, they're not in a relegation battle.
Tenure relative to the football club and demands of the position, I think top gaffer.
He's done well.
Yeah.
He's done really, really well so far. It's distinctive. It's a very, very specific style of play.
You like this next guy.
But it works. Next up, we have got Johannes Thorup. Again, similar to Marti Cifuentes and to Luke Williams, really. He's a geek's favourite because he...
they're quite cool, aren't they?
They are quite cool. And I was quite intrigued when he came in because we didn't know too much about him, but we knew that he was very, very well respected in Denmark and he was coming here with a great pedigree based on what he did there. And he's definitely improved Norwich City. He's definitely improved them. They couldn't be playing a more different style of play. They couldn't be more controlled and comfortable when it does work. He's definitely got them playing a very, very good brand of football. The results are good on the whole. The performances, when it is good, are phenomenal. He's got some players playing some extraordinary football. I mean, Borja Sainz, for example, the individual improvements on certain players. I mean, Kellen Fisher's one, Sainz another, Sargent before that injury was firing. They've still got Nunez there that's definitely had a fantastic season. I could keep going on. He's definitely improved individuals and also made that Norwich team much, much better as a unit. Are we talking about a side that could potentially reach that top 6? That's not the point of the video, but that's where Norwich want to get to, understanding that when Johannes was appointed, this was a long-term project. This was going to take time. His style of play can't be adopted to perfection overnight, especially just one pre-season and one full summer. I watched them play first game of the season. They looked dreadful. You compare them to now, already there are such vast improvements. For that reason,
It's a sign of a top gaffer, isn't it?
I think he's a top gaffer. I think they will be successful. If it doesn't happen straight away, don't panic, because he's putting the building blocks in place to suggest he's got some fantastic ideas.
Here comes another top gaffer in John Eustace, another really good fit heading into 12 months into the job he's got there. Had it not been for the bizarre Birmingham situation, which feels like a little while ago now, and it is for Eustace, life could have been so different, but that's football, isn't it, Jack? I didn't get to see his team play because of the weather. Again, isn't a bit of a theme developing here on this video. He made a Leeds side look average yesterday, which takes an awful lot of doing, and you've got to absolutely applaud him for that. You've got to stand up, take your hat off, and dip your head, because that is quite something. He invokes a real authority in his Blackburn side for me, and he demands fight and aggression, and his players respond to said demands. He's a top gaffer. He's going great guns. Don't be surprised if John Eustace is managing a side that end up in the playoff chat this season, or for the majority of this season, because Blackburn are flying.
And they're staying flying. They continue to fly. We thought they might have a good start and might fall away. They keep going. That comes down to a fantastic manager. Absolutely agree. Tom Cleverley, I've got next. Again, this is really difficult because the sample size is small, but the sample size we do have is really positive, because Tom Cleverley has had a great start at Watford. And I'll be honest, I doubted not necessarily him. I doubted Watford. I didn't trust Watford going into the season. I think I had good reason to not trust them, because we don't quite know what Watford are going to do, especially the hierarchy there. But they seem to have trusted Tom Cleverley, trusted a manager that wants to learn, wants to get better, and already is showing great signs of a head coach. And it's working. It is working really well. They remain in a very nice position, currently 6th in the Championship. Again, looking at the league table solely, they look much better too. It's a really good brand of football. At home especially, they have been phenomenal. They are so strong at home. They've made Vicarage Road a really strong place and a very difficult place to go. I know firsthand they weren't fantastic against Oxford, but that home advantage, the belief that at home they are the favourites no matter the situation within the game, is a really strong criteria to have as a team. For that reason, I think Tom Cleverley so far, as his time at Watford manager, we're looking at his tenure as Watford manager, has shown he is a top gaffer, and he can only get better, because they look really good. They're playing a good brand of football too.
You mentioned the home form. The biggest and probably only compliment you need to pay Tom Cleverley is he's unbeaten in his first 15 home games in charge. And
can't knock that.
No, you can't. But a little fortunate yesterday to keep that unbeaten record intact, I think, yes. But given how we're judging it, he's punching above and beyond the expectations of many in North West London, isn't he? So for that reason, I'm
Watford were written off.
In complete agreement. I think Tom Cleverley was on my list, by the way.
Was he?
Yeah, but you've still got Michael Carrick to do, and Carlos.
I missed Carlos Corberan.
You missed off Carlos.
Doing Carlos now.
You go Carlos. That's fine.
Carlos Corberan at West Brom next. If you ask most Championship fans across the whole division, they'll have a lot of good things to say about Carlos Corberan.
We rate him externally.
He is very highly rated manager. He's linked to pretty much every Premier League, bottom half Premier League job that comes up.
Which is a good sign.
Which is always a good sign. He's a very
not for West Brom fans,
no,
but it's a good sign.
It shows he's a very well-respected, highly rated coach at Championship level. And at West Brom, it's not always been easy since he's been there, but he's managed to get a really strong tune out of that squad.
Yep.
So far this season, they look good. They had a good. They're drawing a lot, but they've had a good start, and they're being very difficult to beat. They look really strong. Is that always meaning they're winning games? No, it's not. But to be able to not lose, and we always say if you're not going to win, make sure you don't lose, and they are doing that really well. And that's a very strong, important aspect of a football club. And especially if you're the manager, it's, I imagine, very comforting. For that reason, I'm not going to run through all the numbers because it's strong. 44% win percentage is extremely strong. 1.6 points per game is really strong. I think he probably would have keys to the city, because if he left West Brom, there would be a lot of upset West Brom supporters, and that's always a good sign.
My first keys to the city, it's taken us the whole video to get to. Regis Le Bris at Sunderland. In the round, it's gone really well. Last few weeks, gone off the ball a little bit, and I know we're talking about where things are right now. I watched the Sheffield United-Sunderland game on Friday night, and Sunderland actually played really well. They went to Bramall Lane with a swagger about them that stems from what Le Bris is putting together. One of those games where that one moment, that's the determining factor. That's what you go off, and it went Sheffield's way. Having led at the top for the Championship for a while, this season so far. Of course, it's naturally disappointing when things drop off a bit, but back to the criteria where we said at the very top, the tenure relative to the football club and the demands of the position. Sunderland want to be a club back in the Premier League. You ask any Sunderland fan, they're desperate to get back to those glory days. They had such a great time of it when they were in the Premier League, and the fall from grace was as spectacular as your Pompey, and perhaps not quite as bad because it didn't end up in League Two. But I'm talking about, given the size of the club and the stature of the place, Sunderland belong miles and miles and miles north of any kind of League One position. Where they do belong is at that top end Championship, and they belong to be a Premier League side. Let's make absolutely no bones about it. I think Reggie could well be the man to take them back there. I think there's a very good chance that he does. If he does, he'd have the keys to the city for a long time, because if there's one thing I know about Sunderland fans, is if you get it right, they will love you eternally, and it takes an awful lot for that to ever be tainted. If you get it wrong, it becomes a really difficult place to manage very quickly. With that in mind, I think he's keys to the city. If he wants to cement that keys to the city status, I think he needs to get them to the Premier League.
I'm sure that's what he wants as well. I'm sure that's what he wants.
Of course it is.
Michael Carrick, I've got next. Interesting when looking at some of the numbers here. He has the best career win percentage in the Championship. He's only been at one club. Some of the managers, of course, we're looking at 5, 6, 7 to 15 jobs. He's only been at Middlesbrough as a first-team manager. We're not counting his interim role at Manchester United, which was also very, very good. 3 games, though. We're looking at purely as a first-team manager. His time at Middlesbrough, it's very strong. He's won half the games he's managed, which is really impressive.
Immense, isn't it?
Which is really, really impressive. Of course, he came in mid-season. He transformed them. He changed the way they look to play the game, and also climbed up the league table. Finished on 75 points. Missed out, of course, in the playoffs in the semi-finals last season. Tampered with injury. Still playing a good brand of football. Results weren't always there. So far this season, they've been really, really strong. A few blips, a few moments where I think in the week they lost at home to Blackburn. Again, we've credited Blackburn already, but I think it came down to missing opportunities, missing chances. They looked a little bit like that in the first game of the season, or first few games of the season. Of course, Portsmouth was one of those where they had lots of the chances, lots of the ball, but weren't able to convert. A similar story at the week, and that's maybe an aspect they've got to improve on, is taking opportunities when teams are sort of looking to sit in a slightly deeper block. There is definitely areas to improve, but again, they shut everybody up again at the weekend, winning 3-1. And for a large part of the last couple of weeks, they've been scoring for fun. I think 13 goals they've scored in 4 games, which is a joke. It could be more than that. I think it is 13 goals. They scored 3 yesterday. So they've been phenomenal. For that reason, Michael Carrick, he's very, very nearly got keys to the city.
Oh, I think he might have them already.
Have they got to go up, though? They're going to be a few doubts still.
If I'm saying Reggie's already got the keys but needs to cement it with Premier League status,
I look at keys to the city is, if you ask the majority of fans, would they say, no, I haven't really got too many doubts. I think there's a few doubts still for Michael Carrick. If even with that promotion, if we did this in about 3 months' time, 4 months' time, even if they haven't secured promotion yet, we could still be looking at keys to the city.
Do you think there's an element of Borough have been really close to it recently as well? They've got
maybe
close and haven't quite managed it. I'm thinking particularly last season.
And the year before that, even though he inherited a team that looked terrible. But he got them to a good position.
You're going to have a double header. Go with whatever
I'm
you
going
think.
to go top gaffer, but he could be, without even a promotion, keys to the city. They just need to give him a little bit more time. Let's not go overboard just yet. Let's appreciate what he's done, though.
This is Jack's one, and he's going to talk about it. With Daniel Farke, we've put safe pair of hands, brackets, sometimes he skates.
Yeah, Daniel Farke was really interesting. We had this conversation on the phone yesterday. Look at his current team win percentage. It's the best in the division. 56% win percentage. The best out of any manager currently looking at their tenure and their win percentage.
Which you would have thought you can't argue with.
Looks strong. 1.9 points per game. That's really, really high.
That's promotion written all over it.
47% career win percentage. You've got to remember that was he was at Norwich for a large period. They're in the Premier League and got relegated a couple of times. 74 games he's been at Leeds United. Now, Leeds fans, again, I don't upset the masses because I imagine there's going to be some very, very strong Leeds opinions, and you watch them week in, week out. I get it. I get the frustration when things don't work out. Yesterday's a prime example. I did see a few people going, in my opinion, overboard after one defeat, but I get the expectation. Leeds want to be back in the Premier League. I'm also not saying that the numbers are the holy grail, because there are aspects of Daniel Farke as a manager that I also agree he could be better at. There are times where he gets substitutions wrong. He does get team selections wrong. He's quite stubborn in certain players that he plays week in, week out. I think Melier, the goalkeeper, has been hanging on to that position for far too long. He's got a mistake in him every single time, and Daniel Farke sort of refuses to address that situation. And there are others. They're also suspect to a game like yesterday where they can win 5 or 6 games on the bounce, then lose 1-0 and not really look like a good team whatsoever. And that can be extremely frustrating, because that's the sort of difference between a side that finishes 3rd or 4th or a team that finishes 1st or 2nd. I can't look at that though and still say that he's just a safe pair of hands, because I do still truly believe he will get Leeds United promoted this season, and you cannot have a promotion-winning manager in safe pair of hands. I don't think he's ever going to get Leeds the keys to the city at Leeds, because he's just not everybody's cup of tea. I respect that, but you can't argue with the fact that I think he probably will still be successful. He's definitely got his flaws, but I think you can still have that good of a record and have your flaws and still be a top manager. I think he is a top manager.
Boring football, no. Frustrating to watch at times, yes.
Frustrating decisions, yes. But then he'll do something clever, and then you'll go, he's inconsistent, yet the results are still fantastic. It's really tricky, isn't it? Only Leeds fans will understand, and I think
Leeds fans let us know below.
I can see their frustration at times.
Yeah.
But I also can't accept to put a safe pair of hands on the manager that's won 56% of his games.
My last manager is equally as difficult to tread, and I feel like whenever discussing Burnley, it's almost like walking on eggshells a little bit. I am, of course, talking about Scott Parker. Now, there was a period, wasn't there, whereby everyone's kind of turned round that warned Burnley fans, went, oh, look, we told you so. It was going to be rubbish. You're not going to enjoy it, but it's going to be weird because you'll be in a position whereby the Premier League is literally in touching distance if you continue in this vein of form. However, it's tough, isn't it? Because his
record's fantastic.
His record's fantastic, yet the way he splits and divides opinion, the vibe he gives fans of the clubs that support his teams don't strike of say you're pulling faces. It's tough.
It's so tough because I look at the league table. It's strong. They've conceded the least number of goals. They won 4 on the bounce. Yet there will still be a position. There'll be another point this season. I can guarantee this, and you can clip this up. And even after the current, and we couldn't. In fact, it's Scott Parker. We're looking at a good position that Scott Parker currently finds himself in. What I will say is though, there'll be a point this season where Scott Parker's position at Burnley will be doubted. That it will still happen this season. There'll be a point when somebody or a group, depending on how bad the situation is, somebody will say, "I'm not sure about Scott Parker at Burnley."
Yet
they might still be second.
We're recording this off the back of a 3-win week for Scott Parker and 5 clean sheets on the bounce. So you look at that on paper, you think, how can there be any argument whatsoever? They've got a great defence. Are they great to watch? No. What I would say is it's an invariable that you can't quite pinpoint unless you're a Burnley fan.
It's so subjective to being a Burnley fan. Do you want to win promotion?
Yes, they do.
Or do you want to play an attractive brand of football that Vincent Kompany tried to do and did do at this level, but failed to do in the Premier League? You then have to go back again. This isn't really the point of the video, but we'll have this conversation briefly. Has Scott Parker got a brilliant Premier League record either? No, he hasn't.
But if he delivers it, can you really argue?
We're looking at him as a Championship manager. At the moment, it looks pretty good. I think he's a top gaffer, but there'll be a point in the season where he's lost the dressing room, which is mental.
But then there's part of me that says top gaffer. There's part of me that says, well, he's skating on thin ice with various pockets of the fan base, because how many times do people say Parker out? So
I cannot accept the current position they find themselves in. He's skating. He's not on the level of Wayne Rooney. I'm not having that.
He can't go in the same tier as Wayne Rooney. No, he can't.
And he's got more in the bank as a Championship manager and at Burnley this season than every manager that's currently in safe pair of hands.
Tenure relative to the football club, demands of the position. Burnley demand a return to the Premier League. Scott Parker might well deliver that. Therefore, I think top gaffer.
Burnley fans argue with
me. Go on, argue with me.
Also with each other, probably.
He loves being argued at.
That'll be the case. Finally, let's finish this off with
We're finishing on a high.
We're finishing with Chris Wilder at Sheffield United. They are currently top of the Championship, and that cannot be argued with. They have had a points deduction at the start of this season. They are top of the table after 18 games, which is absolutely phenomenal. They'd be, of course, as point deductions do work, even more comfortable in that position if they started like everybody else did. But that just, again, is credit to what they've done. They've rebuilt that side. They lost some really experienced players that have been at Sheffield United for a long time. A big part of Chris Wilder's tenure. They lost those players. They recruited a younger, more dynamic...
Fabulous recruitment.
There's a refreshment about their side, and you can see them play. That doesn't mean they're always playing incredible football. They can do that. Against Oxford United, I was blown away by some of the patterns, some of the moves. Against Sunderland, though, it wasn't quite like that. It wasn't always free-flowing. It wasn't always edge-of-your-seat stuff. But it was very, very strong. It was very robust. And they, in a split second, can go really dynamic and provide a move that you go, this is another level. This isn't just top-end championship. And that's a good sign. And what Chris Wilder has done at Sheffield United, again, we're looking at just this tenure, but he's rebuilt a side that at one point felt that it was going to take more than just one summer to rebuild.
If the manager is out on a night out after the Steel City derby singing about Tyrese Campbell in a pub, he has to have the keys to the city.
And he didn't have keys to the city before the start of the season. There was a few people that weren't quite convinced, felt they needed a fresh pair of eyes on this job, because it can become quite turgid and quite stale. But he's managed to do a fantastic job of refreshing the Sheffield United side. I've been very, very impressed. They're playing a good brand of football. They're top of the table against quite a few people's early season predictions.
And you've done a fantastic job with that tier list as well.
I think we've done well. Of course, in the comments down below, give us your opinions, give us your thoughts on our tier list. If you were going to do this, let me know where you'd put your manager. I understand everybody has their strong opinions on their manager. They watch the team week in, week out. So it's always going to provide really quite heavy conversation and debate.
And you can be quite protective of your own, can't you? So bear that in mind. We're looking at this purely externally. There's no agenda, there's no nothing. We've looked at it as a clean slate, and I hope you have experienced us be quite candid and open about our own managers in this video as well. So get down there in the comments. Thank you for having me as always.
Remember the criteria too as well. When you're doing this, we're looking at the tenure as a manager, and also
criteria is important.
Looking at what we expected from their job description since they've been appointed.
And we made a bit of a consideration for this season so far as well.
Very important. Leave a like, subscribe. Thank you very much for 10k. Remember, this will probably be one of the first videos we do since we've hit 10k. Thank you so much for that. And we'll see you very, very soon. Take care.